here goes. It's so hard to imagine that here in Minnesota and Iceland, a place that's recognized for being one of the best places to live, from our more liberal politics, now at the center of global civil rights unrest. And we've almost forgotten that we're fighting a deadly virus that's killed over 117,000 nationally and over 1,300 Minnesotans and infected over 2.1 million. And now we're in the middle of fighting the systemic racism. The horrors we watched of the murder of George Floyd and the heartfelt emotion and sometimes violent eruption are a reaction to the culmination of decades of systemic racism and police brutality. And I have to admit, I've been ignorant. Living in my suburban bubble, I knew that there was a lot of racial injustice, and certainly Asians in America have had our share of discrimination and hate. But I was blind to the full extent of what it was like to be Black. And like others, seeing this happen with our own eyes, we can't help but feel enraged. And this is the catalyst for so many of us to say, enough is enough. Too many Black lives are dying at the hands of police, and there's too much injustice for people of color. I was ignorant of the headlines that said that racial inequality in Minneapolis is among the worst in the nation. There was a report that ranked Minnesota as among the worst states in the achievement gap. I was ignorant till I read accounts from a white friend whose husband is Black and 2 sons that look Black, relating all the instances they've had to endure throughout their lives. And as I listened to interviews of other Black men of how frightening it is to be Black while driving or jogging or bird watching, I and millions of others are awakening to understand what Black Lives Matter truly means. It doesn't mean that all lives don't matter. It just means that Black lives need help now. It can't go on like this. The scale of protests here and across the country and even around the world are a diverse cross-section of people of all races. Mostly they've been peaceful protests of thousands of people in hundreds of cities. It started here in Minneapolis, but has spread across the country, which proves that this is an issue everywhere. We witnessed the worst of humanity, but also we've seen the best of humanity. Todd, Chiami, and I participated in a silent march in support of the African American clergy, with people of all faiths following the Black leadership to the memorial site for George Floyd at 38th in Chicago. To see the memorial site and to read the names of all the Black lives that have died through these unjust practices was heartbreaking. And clearly, this is not just about George Floyd, but about Philandro Castile, Jamar Clark, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, Trayvon Martin, Eric Gardner, Michael Brown, and so many others. It was very emotional, and the power of compassion radiating out by close to 1,000 marchers was contagious. But not the virus. I did get tested after that, and I'm negative. With the 24-hour national news coverage focused here in Minneapolis and all the social media outlets, we often saw just repeated highlights of the fires and looting and violence. But often the story that was missed was the visions of a hurting community coming together, helping each other, protesters peacefully being arrested respectfully by the National Guard, mobs of people cleaning up streets for the destruction of unruly rioters, overwhelming generosity of people donating food to those in need, People sharing food, music, water, displaying signs of hope and love, peacefully bringing attention to the urgent needs at hand. Through the national news, we just saw snippets of what was going on. Sometimes it's hard to get the whole picture, hear the whole story. And sometimes we're blind and ignorant to the suffering of others unless it affects us directly. Sometimes we're only shown part of the truth or get wrapped up into distortions perpetrated through our vast social networks. And it reminded me of that ancient Buddhist story of the blind man and the elephant. And I'm sure you've probably all heard this story, but I wanted to just quickly retell it. So once there lived 6 blind men lived in a village. And one day the villagers told them, "Hey, there's an elephant in the village today." The blind men had no idea what an elephant was. And so they decided to go check it out, even though they couldn't see it. They could feel it. So all of them went and all of them touched the elephant. The first man touched his leg and said, "Hey, the elephant is a pillar." The second man touched the tail and said, "Oh, no, it's not. It's like a rope." The third man touched the trunk and said, "Oh, no, it's like a thick branch of a tree." And the fourth man, who touched the ear, said, "No, it's like a big fan." "It's like a huge wall," said the fifth man, who touched the belly of the elephant. "No, it's like a solid pipe," said the sixth man, who touched the tusk of the elephant. They began to argue about the elephant, and each of them insisted he was right. A wise man was passing by and asked them, "What are you arguing about?" And they said, "We can't agree to what an elephant is." Each one of them told what he thought the elephant was like. When the wise man calmly explained to them, "All of you are right. The reason every one of you is telling it differently is because each one of you touched a different part of the elephant. So actually, the elephant has all those features." "Oh," they say, "whereas before we only had limited information, now we have a more complete understanding." And that ended their argument. So this simple story illustrates how inaccurate perception can be, and how biases can blind us, and how the entire truth of something might be misunderstood despite accurate observations. As we look to resolve the issues of social injustice, this needs to be a time of deep hearing. We need to listen to the stories of the Black community and truly understand what they are living through, the truth of their suffering. We need to have perspective of all sides of the issues. We know not all cops are bad, but the systems and policies are stacked against people of color. And while in these recent days, we've made some progress with several states banning chokeholds, eliminating no-knock warrants, reviewing years of previous police brutality history, there's so much further to go. There are very difficult and complex issues and different ideas of how to reform, defund, restructure, reimagine public safety. So we need to look carefully at all views, and we need to educate ourselves on the truth and dig into the facts and have courageous conversations and listen deeply. George Floyd's death changed the world, and there is urgency to take action. We can't just hit the snooze button again and wait for the next alarm. It's important that we take advantage of the momentum at hand, but we know that things won't change overnight. But I'm encouraged by the thousands of protesters who are showing their compassion to join together to force the changes that are clearly needed. Through these difficult times, let us each take this moment to reflect upon our own selves and our own implicit biases, and to work to eliminate our own ignorance, anger, and greed. Let each of us take this time to listen deeply and understand the cries of injustice and understanding the suffering of others. And as we move forward, may the light of Amita's wisdom and boundless compassion embrace us all. And may we live with the Nembutsu in our hearts and live each moment fully and the best that we can. With all of our hearts and minds working together, this time, just maybe, this can be an opportunity for change. Namo Nams. Namo Nams. Namo Nams.